Hello, beautiful kitchen crew. Thank you so much for being online for Cook With Me tonight, and welcome to those who are doing your very first Cook With Me live tonight. So, and I guess an extra special welcome. I know that we've got a couple of teenagers on with us today. So just recently, the last couple of weeks, I've spent a bit of time at the Chancellor School talking to the Year 10s. So thank you very much, Chancellor School, for having me, for hosting me. And I'm hoping that some of you teenagers that are on tonight are going to have some fun making some crispy fries and some French onion dip. So that is what we're making tonight, and I've got so much I want to show you. No need to freak out. I've got a couple of interesting things in the kitchen here tonight. I'm going to explain it as we go. And I just wanted to be able to show you how to make your own crispy French fries, hot chips, whatever you want to call them, at home without needing to ever think about buying a frozen bag, or maybe worse yet, the ones straight from the shops that are done in the deep fryer. So these are going to be done in the oven. We're going to make them crispy, and then we're going to pair it with a yummy whole food real French onion dip, not one that involves using a packet mix and a bit of yogurt or something like that. So I want to show you real food. That is the goal. Give me a little hello. Let me know that you're online. Let me know who's cooking with you today in the kitchen, whether you're just watching, whether you're actually cooking with me at the same time. I love to hear all that feedback. And likewise, if you have any questions during the time and you're on with me live, please feel free to ask. If you are watching this as a recorded one, you can still send in your questions and you can still interact. We do make sure to keep on there and keep regularly making sure you guys have your questions answered. So let's get stuck into it. I've got a couple of fun things to show you. This crazy piece of equipment here I'm going to talk about in a second, but what we want to start up straight away so that we don't end up going on too long tonight is we're going to start by getting the onions simmering down, kind of sauteing. We want to start caramelizing them so that we can put them into the French onion dip first. So if you've kind of got your kitchen set up already, then join me. We're going to start with the onions, and I'm going to just jump straight in. So this is going to be the first step, and a little bit of what I'm kind of trying to show you here is the idea of a flow when you're doing a couple of different dishes at once in the kitchen. So usually speaking, when I'm in a kitchen, I'm going to try to do at least two things, like two meals at once, if not three. Sometimes that just means I'm doubling one of the recipes and then making an extra one while I'm at it. So when we do that, we can actually reduce the total amount of time that we are in the kitchen, is if we look at both recipes at the same time, and some things could be cooking basically while we're preparing the other thing. So that's what we're going to do with this recipe. We're going to do kind of two things at once. Now we probably only need two of these onions. They're a fair size. You could do three. With this recipe, it's quite nice to actually combine two different kinds of onions. So if you've never used kind of one of those white sweet onions, they're quite a nice one to use. So I'm going to try that one, as well as a brown onion or a yellow onion, whatever you want to call that. Now in cutting onions, it's I debated getting out my scuba gear tonight so I didn't have to worry about crying on camera for you, because I tend to have pretty sensitive eyes when cutting onions. I know everyone has their magic methods to stop the tear ducts and all the acid that comes off the onion into our eyes. I've had the most success with a candle flame, but the only risk with the candle flame is that you kind of have to have it really close to kind of burn off the acid before it reaches your eyes. So I figured I'd kind of ditch that idea tonight and rather not do that on camera live. So either that, you could wear scuba goggles, because we just don't want to get those acids into your eyes. And obviously if you're going to be making a nice big batch of anything with onions in it, then it's probably worth your while going to that effort. But in the meantime, I'm just going to try and do this quickly. The other little trick you can do with onions is once you've quickly opened it like this, then we're going to give it a little rinse under some water. So it could be cold water, hot water, doesn't really matter, but we want to start to dissolve and rinse off some of those acids that come out of the onion, which kind of inflame the liquid in the eyes. So a couple little tips on onions there in case anyone found that interesting. Hello, Amanda. Thank you. You and Zoe are on tonight. Good to hear you guys. See you guys again. Thank you very much for being on. Miss you guys. We probably need to catch up again and hear all about how things are going in your whole food world. All right, and let's get rid of these scraps straight away. So if you're new to, I guess, cooking tips and tricks, or new to Cook With Me Live, you'll notice that I always try to have my compost bucket or my scrap bucket right here beside me, so I can kind of put everything in straight away. And then I also have a sink of hot soapy water run at all times when I'm in the kitchen, so that we can just quickly rinse our fingers rather than wasting a lot of water running the tap all the time. All right, let's cut these guys up. So there's not really any particular way that we need to worry about cutting these, simply because we just kind of want them minced up. so that we can turn them into a dip. So half of them are going to get blended into the dip anyways, so you don't really need to worry too much about what they look like. Those of you that are loving your Thermomixes, you might just want to chuck these in the Thermomix and let them do the chopping for you. I'm just going to rely on my sharp knife and get them done as quick as I can, so we don't have any crying going on here. It's happening already. Don't mind me if I don't look at the camera for a second. I'm just going to get this done with. But yes, chopping onions, not my favorite thing in the entire world to do, I can promise you that. How do you guys go with your chopping onion experiences? Am I just a total wuss? I know it depends on the onions too. All right, so I'm going to get out of that area where all that acid is. I'm just going to go over here and wash my knife. And then we're going to get the pot that we're going to put it in. Hopefully let the air clear. And let's drag all those onions into the pot and out of the way. Notice how I moved the cutting board just off the edge of the bench top a little bit, and that just helps me get the pot underneath so I can get a wider part of the pot in for scraping the onions in. And hopefully there'll be less mess on the floor that way. So I'm just going to put that away from me for a second, clean the board. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add the vinegar, the olive oil, and some salt in with it to help the caramelization process of the onions happen a little bit faster, a little bit easier. The salt's going to help break them down. Oh, sorry, those are really strong onions. I should have got the scuba gear out. All right. So we're going to need some olive oil, some balsamic, a little bit of salt as I talk to you through tears. It's good to be back with you guys. We had a little bit of a break there for family reasons and back in the game. And I've also got something else exciting to tell you at the end of this. So, okay, I'm going to go brave the onions here in a second. So we're going to need about 1.5 teaspoons roughly of the salt. And it might feel like a lot, but it's going to make a big batch of dip. And compared to, I guess, using a dodgy salt in a purchased dip or in a packet dip, this is definitely a good quality salt. We're going to get some benefits out of all the electrolytes and minerals that we're going to get from that. And we're going to do about 3 tablespoons of olive oil in with it. All right, so about 1.5 teaspoons. We can kind of eyeball that one. Not super critical. Now the balsamic vinegar is not 100% critical either. Nothing is in any recipe. But the reason for the balsamic is to kind of continue or accelerate that caramelization process. So we're going to put about 2 teaspoons in. If you don't have balsamic, that's okay. You can use apple cider vinegar. You could even just use a little bit of coconut sugar, to be honest, because it's really just the sugars that it's going to help them caramelize a bit faster. I just find that the balsamic vinegar gives a nice flavor profile and it works quite well. Okay, and then 3 little tablespoons of olive oil. Again, pretty approximate. And then we're going to get this onto a high temperature just to start out with, just until we start hearing a bit of sizzling. And then we're going to turn it down and we're just going to let it cook away on low temperature so that it can properly create that. It's called the Maillard reaction. It's a French word. And I probably should have said it properly in that case, but it's the caramelization process that we're after. And it does take time at a low temperature to develop the caramelization of the sugars within the natural onion into that nice kind of dark browned, sort of more flavorful onion that we're after. Okay, so let's get that onto the heat. We can start out with, we'll just not quite full heat, and I'll just wait until I start hearing that sizzle, and then we'll come and give that a stir and let it turn it down basically after that. Now, while we're there, actually come back. I want to show you this. It's nothing too complicated, but we're going to need a big pot for the blanching of the vegetables. So you might just want to get your pot out now, and we're going to roughly fill it about 1/3. It could maybe be up to half, but you don't need to. So by filling it with less water, it's going to happen a lot faster. It's going to boil a lot faster. It's going to save you water, and it's just a bit easier, I find. So we might as well, while we're at it, we might have to turn it off in the meantime, but we might as well just get that onto the boil. And because it's just water, it's okay if it boils a little bit longer than it needs to. And then we know it's ready to go when we're ready for it. Now we can go back and get into cutting up our chips. Wipe the tears. Onion tears, geez. How's everyone else going? Kelly, did you get onion tears? Thanks for being on tonight. Hey Neve, welcome. Oh, you've already cooked it. Well done. That's exciting. I want to see if there's any differences in how we're going to do it tonight. Let me know. And Claire, welcome. Excellent. So good you guys are on tonight. Thank you. Hi Jackie, lovely to see you. Thanks guys. Okay, let's play a little game. It's called Guess the Vegetable. So I'm going to put these in a circle and you're going to type in and tell me what vegetables, well, you know that one, I'm not going to do that one, what vegetables we have in this circle. So start with this guy. Okay. And we're going to do a little test. So go in this order, start with this guy and tell me what we've got here. This one and the other ones I think you'll probably ace, so we don't have to worry about that. Okay, now I'm not going to say what they are yet, but I'm going to start preparing some of the other ones and I'll give you guys a chance to actually tell me what we've got here. So I'm going to move that forward. So go in a circle, start with this guy and work through and we'll see who gets bonus points tonight. Okay, now with this recipe for the crispy fries, the coolest thing I think is that we can pretty much use any root vegetable and even some that wouldn't necessarily be defined as a root vegetable in this recipe. And you know what, because you're doing things at home and because it's not the end of the world and we're not presenting this for a Michelin star at a restaurant, if we don't get perfectly crispy fries because you wanted to use zucchini because you love zucchini or pumpkin, go for it. Don't stop there just because it might not be seen to be one of the more crispy choices for a hot chip. Okay, so definitely got to get some carrots in there. The carrots work super well. Same goes with the sweet potato and the potatoes. Okay, and I think I need to kind of bring up a topic because I've had it come up so often with I guess in the last couple of months even, and the topic is about the potato. So I've had a lot of people that are, doing whichever choices of diet that you're choosing. Most of the time it's involving trying to do a low carb diet and really kind of people being scared of the potato now. So I just wanted to say that, you don't necessarily have to binge on it, but you also don't have to be afraid of eating the poor little potato because the potato does have, believe it or not, a lot of other benefit other than just a slightly higher starch content than some other vegetables. So it's not to say that you're going to eat maybe your entire meal of potato, but a little bit in moderation. Please don't eliminate the beautiful potato from your diet because it too does have other beneficial compounds in it that we want to be eating. Okay, how else? We've got Jen on tonight. Hello, Jen. Thank you. And Allison, thank you for being on. Lovely to have you. Vivian, welcome. And Angela, good to have you back. So questions. Okay, so good. You guys have got some answers in here. So first of all, we started with, Allison says, potato, a swede, a taro, a sweet potato, a dunno, and a beetroot. I love it. So Vivian, potato, turnip, taro, sweet potato, celeriac, and beetroot. Okay, not quite there yet. Angela, potato, a swede, a sweet potato, times 2, don't know, and beetroot. Okay, we're still not quite there yet. Oh, Amanda, let's see. Potato, oh, not quite. You guys are so close. All right, I'm glad we did this. Have a little bit of fun with some veggie guessing games. So what we have here, I know it does look like taro. It's actually cassava. And they are different, but you're right. We've got a potato. This is a purple potato. Okay, we've got a swede, S-W-E-D-E, different to a turnip. Okay, it's much nicer roasted, whereas a turnip I find can be a little bit bitter when roasted. So I like a turnip fresh. So this is a cassava, and we actually make someone makes. This is what you make tapioca flour from. So when they extract just the starch from this plant or this root, then you get the tapioca flour. But you can also buy cassava flour, which still has all the extra fiber in it, and it behaves pretty much the most directly to a regular wheat flour without having any gluten in it. So cassava. Then we have a purple sweet potato. This little guy, you were right. I think Amanda got this one first, a kohlrabi. Very good guess. We have them in, so most of the varieties you'll find in a light green like this or in a bright purple. They're absolutely beautiful. And don't throw away these leaves. So these leaves you can actually steam and have just with a little bit of olive oil and lemon or salt and vinegar, salt and pepper. Don't throw these guys out. They're delicious and they're just a great other leafy green vegetable. So save those and steam them. okay? And what we're interested in for now for the crispy fries is I'm going to peel this skin off and we're going to have the inside. It's also really good raw, okay? Whereas the cassava, you don't eat that raw, okay? So definitely this is a great raw vegetable just as a crudité. So just cut it up like you would celery pieces, carrot pieces, and have that with dips. And then obviously, yes, we have the big, beautiful, big fat beetroot. Hello, Jaden and Saxon and Xander. You guys are on tonight. Thanks for being on there with Mom. Very cool. Okay, so I want to turn these into crispy fries. I want to show you guys how it goes. Let's start out with the Swede for now. And before we get to this big bad boy, unfortunately, it's really only suitable to the potato. So I'm going to show you that when we get to the potato. So let's take off kind of that big top from the Swede. We don't need to take much else off, and the rest we can usually do with a bit of a peeler. Now, if you've given it a good scrub, you don't absolutely have to peel the Swede, but if it's your first time with it, then we might want to give it a little peel just for texture purposes. Okay, so it's quite easy to peel, not too thick of a skin, unlike some of the others we're going to get to here in a second. And then pretty straightforward from there. So any shape you want to put that in, I'm going to go, we could do rounds. Let's just do some, I guess, regular fry shapes if we can. Okay, now a little trick. Regardless of which vegetable you're cutting, you kind of want to have a think about how tough or how hard that veggie is. And you might not know this until you cook a couple. So the reason I say that is because if you're going to be putting these all into the same pot at once to do the blanching, you want to kind of make sure that the tougher veggies are cut a little bit thinner so that they cook easier. And then the softer veggies you can cut a little bit bigger so that they cook sort of at the same rate. Okay, so you can really customize that and do that however you wish. So we're just going to transfer these to a bowl for now. There we go. And let's go to the sweet potato next. So we've got two different kinds of sweet potatoes here. The coolest thing about this one, there's like a reverse version of this. There's one that has a white skin but a purple inside. This one has a purple skin but a white inside. So let's, we might as well use the whole thing. Okay, and again, you do not have to peel these. So you may just wish to take off all the blemishes, kind of like this. Maybe there's some deep holes in some cases. You might want to take them out just in case they actually go further into the skin as a blemish. But we don't actually need to peel these, provided they've had a good scrub. Okay, so I might just do a little bit of kind of cosmetic shaving of this. Give it an extra little wash. And we'll call it good. So, with hot soapy water. So isn't it cool that we can have the purple skin, but the white inside, and then the exact opposite in a different variety of sweet potato. I love it. Okay, now just as a quick little check on your onions, if you can hear them sizzling, we can turn them down. Let's just have a check on them. Okay, we've definitely got some action happening there. So we'll give them a little stir and time to turn them down. Now, just be aware that if you've put the balsamic vinegar in there, your onions are going to look brown before they've actually caramelized. So don't be fooled. We're going to turn that down to maybe 3, maybe 2. That's pretty hot burner, so I'll leave that at about 2, and we're going to let that just caramelize. And our water's boiling, so let's just turn that off for now. We'll come back to that in a second. There we go. Okay, so back to our sweet potato. Let's get some French fry shapes happening there. And if it's too tough to cut through or your knife is a bit dull, make your life easier. So go in half first, and then you might want to work with a flat surface. So it's going to be much safer to cut through if you've got a flat surface to work with. There we go. Little French fry shapes. As thick or as thin as you want. Obviously, the thinner you go, the more cuts you have to make, but the more crispiness and the more flavor you can get on the outside. So there's a bit of a trade-off there. There we go, nice flat surface. And those of you that have a food processor with slicing blades, You may just want to always make round chips so that you can stick the veggies through the food processor and let it do all the chopping for you. So that's entirely up to you. It'll probably be easier then to get the really thin fries if you use a machine like that. How's everyone going? Is anyone cooking at the same time, or are you all just watching me hopefully not stuff up? Okay, one little trick too. When it comes to sweet potato, in particular the purple one and the white one, they oxidize quite quickly. So if you don't want that to happen, we just need to add a bit of water to them and just let them soak in the water, because then that prevents the oxygen from getting to them and oxidizing. Not that it's going to necessarily affect the quality or the taste, it's more just aesthetic. So we'll just put a bit of water in there for that one. Okay, kohlrabi, here we go. My favorite vegetable. I have such fond memories of the kohlrabi because my dad used to grow this in the garden when we were kids, and he loved his garden so much. He had a knife in the garden so that we could actually go out into the garden and just eat straight from the garden, basically. So he would pick us a kohlrabi. He would peel it with a knife. He even had a little camping salt shaker out in the garden that he stored right beside the knife. The knife was like literally stored in the garden, in the dirt between the wood and the dirt. And he'd take it out of the dirt, clean it off, and we just get to sit there and try this kohlrabi just with a little bit of salt on it. And I'll never forget that. It was such a good memory of literally just knowing exactly where your food comes from and how it grows. So it doesn't have that thick of a skin. You can use a peeler, or you can use a knife. A paring knife would be easier than the big one I'm using. Okay. And sometimes you'll get them if they're really, like if they're old and they've been picked a while ago, or if they're at the end of the season, they might be a bit tough. So hopefully you get a good one for your first time around, because they should be really crisp and light. And it's almost the texture of kind of a nashi pear. If you've never had a nashi pear, it's kind of, well, actually I think I could have probably cut it in this machine. So it's quite similar to the potato in texture, but the flavor is, how do I describe the flavor? It's kind of like a non-spicy radish. So it's quite light and crisp and fairly neutral in flavor. Got a bit of crunch to it. I think it's most similar to if you've ever eaten a raw potato. It's kind of like eating a raw potato. There's not a lot of flavor there, but it is quite nice, especially as a dipper in dip. So there's our kohlrabi. Forgive the crunching, it's really yummy. All right, next up, we're gonna save the beetroot till last, because as you can imagine, it's gonna make everything red. Let's get into the cassava. Now this has got a much tougher skin. So depending on your peeler, most of them probably won't cut it. So you'll notice it's quite tough to cut. So what we might do, we're gonna cut it in half, and even cut it in half this way, lengthways. Okay, you'll notice it's quite tough. Sometimes there's quite a bit of a root, like a stem in the middle. This one seems to be a nice tender one, so we don't have to worry about that. But sometimes you'll find there's quite a stem in the middle, and we kind of want to take that off. So then we want to make sure we get this whole skin off. So see how there's an outer skin, and then there's this thicker skin on this side, right? So if it comes off nicely like that for you and you can just peel it by hand, that's excellent. Otherwise, we need to get in there with the knife and take off that outermost skin. But it's pretty easy. So it's actually kind of a nice, it's almost like nature's packaging, nature's natural skin coating, I guess you could say. It's pretty cool. It's kind of like the bark of a tree even. So there we go. I'll take off that bad boy. Okay. Cut that one in half. So you can kind of see, it's going to be maybe a bit hard for the camera to see here, but there is a bit of a root in the middle. So I'll just take it out and show you kind of what I'm talking about here. It's not the end of the world. It's kind of just a bit tougher. So it's just kind of like the middle of a pineapple, for example. You don't have to take it out. You might not even notice, but in some people, you might just want to take out that little bit of a middle core bit. So it's just a bit tougher. Not a big deal. Okay, and then we'll get the rest of that skin off. So I mean, you can get this quite commonly in North America. They're normally called yucca fries. So Y-U-C-C-A. Yucca is the other name for the cassava. So yucca chips or yucca fries, even yucca tortillas. You can make a lot of things out of this beautiful starchy tuber. And in parts of the world where food is scarce, it is a very valuable food source because it actually is quite high in calories and high in starch, which, in every culture other than our, extremely privileged and sometimes overabundance of food, it's a very valuable food source in that sense because it's very dense in its nutritive value and its ability to sustain the body. Okay, how's everyone going? Anyone finding this interesting with the cassava? Hello, Carmel, welcome. Thank you for being on tonight watching. Vivian, where do you get your cassava and kohlrabi from? That's a good question. Now, it's not always at the same place. Sometimes your local produce store, you might actually have to ask them if they can get it in. Sometimes they only bring in a small amount, so sometimes you might miss it in your regular produce store. They might just have a little box of it kind of somewhere with their other more rare things. Otherwise, just ask for them to get it in. Definitely when it's in season, you'll be able to find it at the farmers markets. Well, I say definitely, but the good farmers markets that have that extra selection that's not otherwise available in the supermarkets. So there's not a consistent source. These are things that generally need to be in season for us to be able to find them. So sorry I can't point you to a specific location. It's kind of one of these bonus vegetables that when you do see them, you can just pick them up now that you know what they are and give them a try. Remember, those of you that have worked with me a few times already probably know my rule of every time I go to the farmer's market or go shopping, I try to get one new food and test one new food every time I go. Not two, just one, because then you're actually more likely to go and work with it rather than be overwhelmed by the number of new foods that you have no idea what to do with. So just try one new food every time you go shopping, and next thing you know, your world will be hopefully transformed. And you'll have a bunch more variety in your diet, which will hopefully then translate to more likelihood that you'll get what your body might be lacking. Okay, so this is a tougher one. You saw I had to work a little bit more for that one. So we got some cassava chips happening. And we might as well do half a sweet potato. We've got to get some color in that. And again, just give that a scrub. We'll just maybe touch it up. Any little blemishes that might go more than skin deep, like that one. We just want to check them. There we go. So not only is this going to save you, a bit of extra weight in veggies that you've paid for just by spot peeling, but hopefully if you can start getting more and more organic foods in your diet, then you're going to be also getting extra nutrition from leaving the skin on. So in a lot of foods, there's actually a concentrated amount of nutrition in the skin. And so that's what we're after, that's what we're looking for. Better value for your dollar, better value for your body, and less waste. There we go. Okay, now, I did want to quickly talk about the fact that you might be looking at this going, oh my God, that's a lot of work to make hot chips. Okay, now, I get that. I understand that compared to buying a bag of frozen, already semi-cooked fries, it is a little bit more work. And because of that, you actually then get the benefit of having a selection of vegetables, which is not only exciting, but better for you, better for your diet. You know where they come from, you know the quality, you know they're fresh, you know that you're going to be able to make them with, you know what they're going to be boiled in and cooked in, basically. And if you do this efficiently, and what I mean by that is if you get yourself set up to make it so that every time you do this process, you kind of try to maybe make a triple batch. And I'm going to show you the point at which then we freeze so that we can just easily take them out of the freezer and pop them into the oven on a busy Friday night. Now, if your family absolutely loves the hot chips and you finally got the kids eating veggies because you can cook them like this, it's a great start, then you might even want to invest in a piece of machinery, something like this, so that you can do potatoes even faster. Okay? And I'm totally okay if it's going to get a child to get more into their vegetables. even if it means they're eating mostly potatoes in the beginning, but they're tasting the other vegetables, then I'm absolutely okay with, having that potato in their diet, because it's a good way to start introducing it, making it fun for the kids. And something like this is the commercial version. I did buy the domestic version first and it broke. So I don't remember how much I paid for this. It might have been $150. And then we realized we needed to screw it down to something. Otherwise it was kind of flipping up on us. But hey, we did it once. Now we're set up. And the one time every 6 months that I go to make a lot of hot chips, it's useful. So here we go. Let's hope it works for us. There's our purple potato. Isn't that cool? Purple potatoes. I love it. Let's do one of the normal ones. Mussels. There we go. Okay, so it is very quick. And as you can imagine how fast we could punch through enough for a family. Then you could just get your triple batch happening. You could even start a bit of an assembly line, get the kids to help out. And then in the blanching process, they only need to cook for about 6 minutes in the water. So you could even fill the pot, take them out, toss them in their seasonings, and then freeze them in their seasonings after they've been blanched so that we can put them in the oven very easily next time. There we go. Come on. Yeah, so you can imagine there's quite a bit of pressure, quite a bit of torque and stuff on this, so you kind of want to get a good one. But then it goes pretty quickly, and obviously the littler potatoes are easier. It's kind of fun. There we go. So that's pretty quick, isn't it? I mean, in terms of saving you a bit of time and energy, it's worth it if you're going to do a big batch. Okay, so there's our potatoes. Let's pop them in. I always make a big batch of these because they go pretty quickly in our family. All right, so I'm going to keep that as is. I've said about 2 kilos in the recipe. This, just looking at it, is possibly maybe a little bit more than that. It will be actually. That's okay. We're just gonna, I'll show you that you don't really have to look at the recipe once you've done it once. There's a lot of flexibility in this. It's just the key concepts I want to show you. Okay, now the only other thing I want to mention is in the event that you didn't kind of adjust the thickness of your cuts for the different or the different toughnesses of the veggies, then you would be best to cook them separately. So most of the time, when I do this, I'm not using 5 or 6 different vegetables. I'm choosing maybe 3, and then you can really be in much more control over how long they blanch for. Okay, so next step is the blanching. Let's come on back. It's probably time we can actually preheat the oven before we start the blanching process. So if you haven't already done that, let's turn it up to 200 degrees Celsius or about 400 degrees Fahrenheit. And actually, I want to bring you over and I want to show you what I mean by getting your oven set up in this case. Okay, so we're going to turn that on to about 200. And I want you to try to maximize your oven space. So before I make that too loud, basically we're going to try to get as many trays into your oven at once as you can. Now, depending on the size of your oven, you could maybe do 3 or 4 trays. If you only have 2 racks that come with the oven, you can actually create a third one. If you don't have this piece, this piece that comes with your oven, that's okay. You can just get out your stainless steel baking rack and put that down the bottom, because the elements are actually right there in the bottom of the oven. So we don't want to put the pan directly on the bottom of the oven or everything will burn onto it. So you can actually use the stainless steel baking rack as a bit of a distance between that, and then you can get a third shelf in your oven. So ideally, you've got this extra piece that goes in the bottom of the oven so that we can use that as a shelf. The other thing you can do is sometimes, depending on what bakeware you use, it's going to take up the whole width of your oven perfectly, so it itself can act as a shelf in the oven. So it just depends on what your setup is. So let's get that preheated. And question. Okay, So Neve, excellent. So advice from Brisbane is that the Mount Gravatt farmers markets have cassava quite regularly. That's excellent. And good arm workout. Yes, I know, that's lovely. Thank you, Vivian. Hi there, the beets. You're right, I haven't done the beets yet. I'm going to cut them after because they turn everything red. So I will do them. Thank you for the reminder. I'm just going to start out with this one so I can get you guys going. Okay, let's get that hot water back on the boil. Okay, and then we're going to do the blanching process. Now, to facilitate this, the easiest thing is going to be, because I use this bowl as my transfer bowl, we're probably going to need another bowl. So in future, if you're not doing this big of a batch, you can just leave them on the cutting board. But I'm actually going to get another bowl to put them into when we're done. Okay. So even if it's not perfectly boiling yet, that's okay. We can just start by getting them into the hot water very carefully. It doesn't splash you. Okay. And we don't want to overfill it. So, you might want to look at how much you have. You could do 2 batches, you could do 3. Probably the less you do at a time, the better, I guess the more happy you'll be with your results. So we just want to kind of get them all into there at once. And we want about 6 minutes. Now, that depends a little bit on how thick you've cut them and how much of a rumbling boil we get that to, but we want about 6 minutes. So my timer on here is annoying, so I'm going to get my wonderful cameraman to set me a 6-minute timer and let me know when we're at that, and then we're going to check on it at that point. So what we're looking for, if you don't have a timer, you don't actually have to time this, you could just check on them. We want to be able to put a fork into these pieces without it at all feeling fully cooked. And the reason for that is once we start tossing it with the flours and the coatings, we don't want them to fall apart as they toss. Okay, so we're just doing this to draw out some of the starches from the chips so that they actually crisp up in the oven. This is the secret method, and I know it's an extra step, but I promise you this is how all the hot chips are done in, I guess, the restaurants, the cafes, even the frozen ones you buy in the supermarkets. They've all been blanched in advance so that you can get those crispy chips after. Okay, so we've got our 6 minutes, it's on the boil, our onions are going to town, hopefully they're just nicely simmering along there on a low heat, starting that caramelization process. It normally takes about 15 or 20 minutes for this amount of onions in this size pot. So we'll let them do their work. Okay, and then what you're going to need to have ready for when this is ready to take out, ideally if you have a slotted spoon, that's great. Otherwise, you can also use a metal sieve or colander like this, and then if you had some tongs, you could just take them out, put them in here, let them drain in the water. We want to keep the water for the next batch, and then you can take them out that way. So whatever kind of setup you've got, again, if this is the type of thing you want to be having for your family regularly, you only have to get it set up once. So you only need to kind of figure out, and maybe you have to go and get a slotted spoon, but then you've got it, you're set up, and it's going to be easier every single time you do it. Okay, so while that's happening, that's going to start to, I guess, go fairly quickly. What we can do now is make up a bit of a premix for all of our dry ingredients and our flours that we're going to put on top. So we can get those out. If you don't already have them out, let's bring them over. We're going to need some tapioca flour. We're going to need some polenta. And if you've got almond meal, I've got a little bit of sunflower and pepita meal here just left over, so I'm going to use that up. So we really just need kind of, I guess, some texture, some flavor, a little bit of crunch that's going to happen with that. So I'm going to use those ones. So let's come back and we're going to make up our, essentially it's kind of a premix for your crispy fries. And to that effect, if this is something, again, that's a regular staple in your family, then you may wish to make yourself up a premix of this mixture and put it back in your pantry in a jar labeled crispy fry batter or crispy fry mix. Okay, so that's another option that you have to make yourself more organized. Okay, so I've got some tapioca flour, and then we'll just need a little bowl, nothing crazy, just to mix that up in. And in terms of spices, this is where the recipe is just a guide, guys. So you can do whatever you want for spices. I'm going to give you some ideas. You do not need all of these. Okay, so you could spice it up however you want. In the recipe, I've called for a Cajun blend, which is essentially like a taco seasoning. So ideally, you've got your own made up and it's ready to go. So we could do a taco seasoning, hot chip or French fry. You might just want to sprinkle some rosemary on top and just have rosemary chips. You could do Moroccan. Why not? If you've got a nice Moroccan spice blend and if you smell it and go, yep, that's the flavor I want on my fries tonight, then why not? You might even just want to put dill, some fresh dill sprinkled over it, or just nutritional yeast and salt and pepper. Even Italian spice mix, okay? That makes a delicious kind of, well, I guess more of an Italian / sort of pizza flavored one. Or you could do curry chips. So choose your favorite curry powder, and that makes a yummy chip as well. So I'll let you choose. I don't know what we feel like tonight. What do we feel like tonight? You guys vote. Tell me which one you want. I want to hear about it. I'll just do that after. All right. So hopefully I'm going to be told when my 6 minutes is up. And in the meantime, we need our measuring spoons. Where did they go? Okay. So let's just make up our premix. Now, again, if you were doing this for a lot of them, you'd probably times the batch by 10 so that you at least had that for the next 10 times you got to make it. So we need approximately 2 tablespoons of tapioca starch. If you haven't got tapioca starch, you could probably get away with potato starch, not potato flour. They are different, okay? And as a matter of fact, I have misguided you a little bit because normally we put the tapioca starch on first. So I'm going to get another bowl. Sorry, guys. At least I caught it. Okay, so it's going to be a bit easier to work with. So let's save that tapioca starch. It's an extra little step, but it's going to make a difference in how the chip holds the batter on it. Okay, not the end of the world if you've mixed it in, but just one little tidbit there. Now for the polenta and your seed mix, we need about half a cup, approximately 1/3 of a cup, depending on how big of a batch you have. Because I have quite a big batch there, I'm going to do the half a cup of polenta. Now please make sure that you're buying organic polenta, okay? Polenta is made from corn, and it's just, yeah, corn is one of those crops that's been kind of heavily changed over the period of time, so we want to make sure that any corn products that we're having, it's pretty important to get organic with that. So that's just a bit of sunflower and pepita meal, as I said before. And then we want to put some salt with it. So about a teaspoon of salt. How's our time, cameraman? Close? Now? All right, we better go take those out. So let's do a teaspoon of salt, and we're going to go take out the hot chips from the blanching water. Look at those colors, wow. That's so bright with those purple potatoes and the yellow cassava. So cool. Look at the colors. Okay, so we want to get all those out, and then we can transfer that into another bowl. If there's a couple in there still, it's not the end of the world. They'll just be a little bit more cooked and might go a bit mush, but that's okay. Okay, so there we go. And the next lot can go in. So you can also do it this way, which could be a little bit more mucky, but we'll do another batch this way. There we go. Okay, so we kind of want to get, I'm doing thirds. You might be doing half batches. I'm going to do thirds. That's about right. Okay, another 6 minutes, please, Jeeves. And we'll continue over here. All right, we've got our salt in. Let's choose a spice. Did you guys vote? Moroccan. Okay, Vivian won. Oh, someone said Cajun. Matt said Cajun. I didn't say Cajun. Okay, I'm gonna try, I can't decide. I always do Cajun. Moroccan. Thanks, Vivian. Let's see how that goes. I don't think it's too spicy. Good. All right, so again, now depending on your mix, we're gonna look for maybe between 1 and 2 tablespoons. And because I've got the teaspoon in here, 1 tablespoon equals 3 teaspoons. So I'm gonna do about 3 teaspoons, which is 1 tablespoon of Moroccan spice. And Vivian, it'll be all your fault if those taste like crap. No, I'm kidding. Thank you. Okay, let's give that a little toss. Nothing really that important here. And then we can go straight to our first lot of chips. Here we go. So while they're still a little bit hot, this is kind of the ideal time to start putting our little bit of tapioca starch over top of them. Okay, if you need more, it's fine. The recipe is just a guide. And we don't want to put too much, otherwise they'll go a bit gluggy. So then this is why you want to get a big bowl. You ready? This is the fun bit. This is when you can get the kids involved. So you got to practice your bowl toss. I don't know if there's a prize at the end other than dinner, but there you go. We just want to get them covered in that just lightly. Okay, that's kind of looked to kind of dry them out a little bit, which is good because now we're going to put on a little bit of liquid to create our next sticky layer for the last crunchy topping. So we want to put a little bit of olive oil. Now, if you want to measure this, you can, but I'd rather you actually learn how to do this by sight. A, because it's going to be a lot less stressful the next time you go to do it, and B, because you'll actually learn something. So we don't want to douse them, okay? We just want a little sprinkle. Because I'm doing 1/3 of the batch, and I called for about 2 tablespoons of olive oil total, you probably only want to go less than a tablespoon on this. And then a non-dairy milk or water. Okay, so I'm just using a little bit of bonsai here, a little sprinkle, sprinkle. You're better off doing that twice rather than getting too much at once. Okay, a little toss of that. And then about 1/3 of our mixture, right? Because we've got 1/3 of potatoes. So we want to go about 1/3 of our mixture. Again, not the end of the world if it's not exact. Okay. And if you want to put extra on and make it extra crispy, you're very welcome to. They might just need to cook a little bit longer and be at the top of the oven a little bit longer. But there we have it. It's that simple, guys. So this is the stage at which you would freeze them. And I would recommend freezing them initially flat on a tray. So the same tray that we would otherwise be baking them on, I'd recommend you freeze them on this so that when you take them off, once they're frozen, you take them off and then you could put them in a container or in a bag and they wouldn't all lump together in one big mass. So ideally you want to be cooking them straight from frozen, so they need to be individual when you take them out of the freezer, like the ones you buy in the shops. So I would freeze them exactly like I'm doing here on this tray. We don't want to crowd them. Okay. I could get my fingers in there, but okay, so we don't want to crowd them, but if we freeze them flat like this, then at least once they're frozen you can break them up. They'll all be individual fries and they'll work even better when you go to actually cook them straight from frozen. Okay, so now this is a slightly important step. You really kind of want to make sure we're not crowding them to bake them, and that's because otherwise they just won't be as crispy. So we want to give them some space. It might feel like you don't have enough on your tray, but space is good for crisp. If you like soggy fries, go ahead and load them up. And the other little trick to crisp them is going to be to give them a little bit of a rotation in the oven, because they're going to get the most crisping on the very top and the very bottom of the oven. So we kind of want to let them all have a chance in that light, okay, in that direct heat. So we'll just do a little bit of rearranging. And then our first batch can go in. How are we going? Question, can polenta be replaced? Okay, Hannon, good question. Polenta, yes. So if you weren't to use polenta, you could use extra seed and nut meals. So you could use extra almond meal. Sunflower meal is probably a good one for that. It's quite a neutral flavor and it's a bit less expensive than almonds as well. What else could you use instead of the polenta? You could use gluten-free breadcrumbs. So if you have like a rice crumb, or if you've got, you know, if you're organized enough to have your own kind of croutons or gluten-free bread dried out, then you could use that. You could just crush that up in a food processor, till it's kind of the texture of polenta, and you could use that instead. So hopefully that's useful for you. Okay, and then straight into the oven, guys. And even if these are ready before the others, that's okay. We'll just get them going. And then our 6 minutes is about up. All right, thank you. So it should flow together nicely. I just need my bowl. Okay, so I'm just going to do these 2 batches, guys, just for the sake of time tonight. And then I want to show you the French onion dip, obviously. Okay, so we'll get this batch done and dusted, and I'll cook the other ones later. But just so you know, this is what I mean by kind of while you're at it, if you can just do a double or a triple batch and then get some in the freezer while you're doing this, then it's going to be so much easier and so much less stressful the next time you go to make hot chips. Okay, it's going to make it doable. It's going to prevent that temptation for you to just get takeaway, guys, and you'll be so happy you did it. So a little bit of pre-organization and you'll be set. Okay. So nice, quick and easy. Once you've got your flour on, a little bit of tapioca starch. We might go a little bit more. Bowl toss. Okay. A dash of liquid. Doesn't have to be the both. You could just do the non-dairy milk. And our bit of crispiness. So I'm curious to know, is this easier than any of you might have thought it was? Like, I know it started to look like a lot of work, but hopefully you can see that once you've done it a couple of times, pretty darn quick. Okay. There we go. Spread them out and pop them in the oven. So you could add more oil if you wished to make them kind of that little extra bit crispy, but sometimes it can actually work against you. Sometimes it actually locks in the starch from the vegetable, and it actually makes it mushy. So I'd probably recommend, it's better for the body too, if we go less oil, straight into the oven. Okay, French onion dip. Let's bust this one out quickly because you can't have these fries without it, in my opinion. Just quietly. Okay, so this one's pretty straightforward. We're gonna need a blender. The better the blender you have, the smoother the dip's gonna be. So again, not the end of the world. You might just end up with a textured French onion dip, which is absolutely okay. Okay. And for this one, we are going to use the onions as they are. They should be pretty much ready by now. But just to give them a couple minutes longer, let's add all the rest of the ingredients into here, and then we're going to blend it up. So we've already put the salt in, we've already put the olive oil and the balsamic. We're going to need about a cup of cashews. Okay, so I've had these soaking. If you accidentally forgot to soak them, not the end of the world. You just will probably get more texture in your dip. So they might not go as soft. See how they kind of look plump and, I guess, swollen? They've absorbed the extra liquid. So we're going to drain that off and put that straight in. Okay. We're going to need about a tin's worth of white beans. Now, if you've got butter beans, that would be delicious. If you've just got regular old cannellini beans, that's okay too. And we don't want the liquid from that, so we're going to get rid of that liquid. So it's really only the onions that take a bit of time, and as you can see, if we started ahead like we did with this one to get them caramelizing while we do the rest of it, this part actually comes together quite quickly. So we've got our cashews, we've got our white beans. Onion powder is a very key ingredient in a French onion dip, even though we're using the fresh onions as well. So I would recommend that you always have onion powder in your arsenal of spices, because it does tend to just be the finishing touch on so many different dips and dressings. So try to have some of that on hand. okay? Oh, tapioca flour. All right, we're gonna do about 2 teaspoons of this onion powder. So it's quite powdery, it's quite fluffy. Try not to breathe it in, otherwise you'll be sneezing. So about 2 teaspoons of that one. Okay, and then we're gonna need some nutritional yeast. Now, depending on how kind of cheesy you want this flavor, we're gonna start with about 4 tablespoons, but know that you can add more of this if you want a little bit more cheesiness to the flavor. So about 4 tablespoons of that. And then last but not least, we're gonna need a bit of lemon juice, and I like to put in a bit of white pepper. Now, you might not, it's quite a spicy pepper, okay? You could use any kind you wanted, but I just like about 1/8 of a teaspoon. So it's just about a half of the quarter is 1/8. So I just measured on the angle, about 1/8 of a teaspoon, and a bit of lemon juice. So normally, in the average kind of juicy lemon, you'll get about a tablespoon of juice out of each half, or 2 tablespoons of juice out of a lemon. So I like it a little bit lemony. I'm gonna go for the full 2 tablespoons, but you might just wanna start with 1 and then have a taste, check it, do it again. And there's roughly our tablespoon. I'll trust that that is. Okay, where are we up to? Neve, we omitted the yeast for intolerances and it was so delicious. Excellent, good to hear. Yes, you're right. It's not a critical ingredient, that one. It's just a different flavor profile. So thank you for letting us know that that's another option as well. Awesome. And thanks for still watching the video even after you've already made it. Thanks, Neve. That's awesome. Okay, so we've got our lemon juice. And last but not least, let's put the onions in. But if you want to have a little bit of extra texture to this, I'd recommend only putting in, say, 3/4 or maybe 2/3 of the onions so that we can actually stir in the unblended onions after and still get that look of a French onion dip. Okay, so here we have our caramelized onions. So they could have gone a little touch longer, but this is definitely great. So we've basically cooked out the really harsh, intense onioniness of them, if that makes sense. And now they're going to be nice and kind of a bit sweeter, a bit softer, a bit yummier. Now, you may need to add a little bit of water depending on your other ingredients, depending on how long the cashew's soaked. So just know that you can add a bit of water or a bit of non-dairy milk to get this to blend properly, but we want to make sure that you don't add the water until you need it. Okay, so let's go over and blend this. I'm going to bring a bit of water with me so that just in case I need it, we can use it. And I can't wait for you to taste it. Come on back. Okay, blend away. Okay, the moment of truth. Have a taste. Remember, the recipe is just a guide. You can tweak it how you want. Okay, so is it oniony enough? Does it need an extra pinch of salt? Keeping in mind that usually a dip is going to be served with a dipper. So therefore, we need it to be stronger when we taste it on its own. It normally needs to have more punch so that by the time you dip it with something, it still tastes really good. So for my personal palate, that needs a little bit more salt. But that's okay, I'm gonna leave it as is. I like the balance with the nutritional yeast. We've got enough lemon in there. Some of you may even tweak it up every now and then and add in a bunch of roasted garlic. That's another nice addition to the dip. You might even change it up altogether and one day add some roasted beetroot and all of a sudden you've got a pink French onion dip. Okay, so you have options, but I'm gonna call that good. And then once we get into the bowl, we're just gonna stir in those extra onions. Here we go. fun making a big mess in the kitchen, isn't it? Especially when you have the rule in your household that the cook doesn't clean. Okay. So there is our French onion dip, hopefully enough to last us at least a couple of days in the fridge for all different types of uses. I've even used this as a pizza base, guys, and it works amazing. It's a delicious pizza base. And then we want to stir in some of those fresh onions so that we get that texture throughout. Or you could just serve them on top. Completely up to you. But there we have it. So your whole food based, real, good quality, no sacrifices, French onion dip without a packet. Ta-da! I hope you guys like it. Neve said she liked it, which is good. I'll take that as a good thing already that one person does. Thank you. Okay, so guys, now our chips are not going to be done in the oven just yet, and I'm realizing we're already kind of a little bit over the usual hour I like to stick to. So I will have a quick peek at them and see how they're going, but probably we're going to need to leave them in the oven to do their final crisping up. Okay, so just know that from this point, there's a couple of tricks I can give you when it comes to the oven. Remember that the top of the oven is where they're going to get the most crispy. So we want to be able to rotate those trays so that they all get a chance under the top heat. The other trick is that some ovens tend to hold a lot more moisture than others. So if your oven is designed to have a really good seal and you're not getting crispy fries, then you might need to take something that's heat safe. So this is like a little silicone pot holder grabber. And sometimes I use that when I want to dehydrate something or dry something out in the oven. I just kind of prop the oven door open with it. Now, you know, not 100% super the safest thing in the entire world because everything above here is going to heat up. So be aware of that, okay? But at least now we can get the moisture out of the oven and the chips are going to crisp up. So this is a trick you can use whenever you're making anything that you want to be crispy in an oven that's designed to hold the moisture. All right. Okay, so as you can see now, there's no sign of browning. It's not fully cooked yet, okay? So ideally what I would do at this stage is I would do a rotation of the trays, and maybe halfway through you might actually want to take a flipper and toss them around a bit to give them a different side up, okay? But instead of having some pre-cooked in advance, I didn't do that tonight. So I'm going to let you be very brave and be very strong and know that those are going to be done in about another 15 or so minutes. And you're going to have your knowledge and your skills now to be able to crisp them up on your own and then dip them away in your French onion dip. Now, before we go, I've got a couple other things I wanted to talk about. So the other things, you might be saying, okay, well, is this going to be your whole dinner tonight? Like, is this just all you're eating for dinner? Well, for the sake of time and for the sake of what we're doing tonight, probably. But I'll probably have a little bit of fresh cucumber with it. And normally I wouldn't have this as a standalone meal. However, it's not the end of the world, guys. If every now and then you have a slightly lighter dinner and you just decide to have some homemade veggie chips with a little bit of whole food French onion dip in it. So do not freak out. It's not the end of the world if that's all the kids end up having tonight. At least you've got quite a bit of, whole food ingredients into them. Hopefully a lot of new vegetables that you hid under the nice crispy coating and with a dip. Maybe they're eating cassava root and they had no idea they're eating cassava root, which I think is a bit of a win. The other thing I want to say is next week, please join us. I've got a very special Cook With Me coming up. It's going to be my birthday. So we've got some special surprises in store. So I want to have you on next week's Cook With Me. I'm going to say nothing more. I'm going to save it as a surprise. And we'll see you next week, guys, on Cook With Me. In the meantime, thank you so much for being on tonight, making crispy fries and French onion dip with me. Would love to continue to have your comments, your interaction, your feedback on how these things are going for you in your family and in your kitchen. And we will see you next time on Cook With Me Live. Thanks, guys. Good night.